This is the moment to plant the flag. Jerome Tang has this roster playing at a different level.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Now part of the #1 sports podcast network. Welcome back to my everydayers. The Kansas State men's basketball team is looking really good. I mean, they came off the win last night, 99-96 against Cal. They had a huge first half. Yeah, there was maybe a little bit of blunders in the second half. We'll get to that, but there's a lot of positives to take away from this. And really my ultimate takeaway is it's time to plant the flag, stand on the moon, whatever. It's for real. Plant that baby, because I believe that Jerome Tang has this squad playing at a completely different level. I'm going to give you my takeaways in this matchup, why I think this team is playing at a level that we didn't believe was possible, and what is next for this team. And I think the NCAA tournament is definitely in the future. Hit that subscribe button, bringing you Locked On Kansas State coverage, Wildcat coverage like no one else every single day. And I really appreciate you joining here on this one. 99-96. First of all, this felt really good after the upsetting loss to the women's team earlier in Manhattan. Then you get this one where you start off 55-34 in the first half. It felt like Kansas State just couldn't miss. And then in the second half, Cal kind of had a flip job on you and found a way to bring it back. And to be honest with you, it wasn't a lot of defensive issues for Kansas State. There were some, but some of it was just Cal just shooting really good. We'll get to that in the second segment, but I want to dig into this offense because overall, this offense looks really good. The win against Cal is simple. This team can score their way into the NCAA tournament. It's that simple. Could you imagine us having this conversation last year about saying that this team is going to make the tournament because of the offense? It is the complete opposite, maybe a complete 180 flip of where we were from last year. This team can score their way into the NCAA tournament. Book it right now. We're looking at a team that has identity, that has confidence, pace, spacing, cohesion, all of it. And we're 3 games into the season and 3 legitimate bucket getters in at all times. And 3 might be the low number. That might be the floor. We're seeing some of these players step up coming off the bench that are proving that they can be impactful players at a level that not only is happening in non-conference play, but once we get the Big 12 play, maybe, just maybe, we're talking about a team that is seen as the most improved Big 12 team that can find themselves potentially competing for a top spot in the Big 12. I'm not going to go out and say that they're going to win the Big 12. The Big 12 is nasty this year. I mean, Houston might win the whole thing, but this team has what it takes to make the dance and not just sneak in. Not just sneak in. David Castillo has arrived, folks. He has arrived. The freshman guard from last year, where many people thought that maybe he wasn't the right pick, maybe Jerome Tang's recruiting issues just wasn't the call. He comes off and struggles last year. Well, since he stuck around, and he was one of the only players from the complete end of the season. Remember, he was interviewed after the final game last year in the Big 12 tournament and was asked if he was coming back. And he said there was no doubt he was returning to Kansas State. It's come and it's shown really good. He came off the bench. He played 23 minutes in this game, 16 points, 6 for 9 from the field, including 4 from 6 from beyond the arc. He was super impressive. And he's not the biggest guy out there, but he still had 4 rebounds. He had 2 assists, and he played good basketball. He has improved so much on the offensive side, absolutely. And we always knew he was a shooter. That was his biggest thing coming out from his high school class, obviously coming from a really prestigious high school in Kansas. And we knew he could shoot. It just didn't hit last year. Now we're starting to see those dynamics. Maybe it's Matthew Driscoll. Maybe that's work from him. Maybe it's with working with all these other shooters like like Bashir, like Haggerty, like Johnson. Who knows? But either way, it's really great. And having a guy like David Castillo be able to come off the bench and play 20-something minutes and maybe give Bashir some off time, maybe give Haggerty a couple minutes of off time, although he played 34 minutes in this one. Just having that on your bench is going to be huge in Big 12 play. I think you can start making a list of who should be in your rotation for Big 12 play. Without question, David Castillo's on that list already. Without question. And that is a huge win for Kansas State. We did our preview this year, talked about David Castillo, how we thought about maybe his minutes could improve if he makes a step up. There's a no doubt now that those minutes are going to stay in the 20-something zone because he continues to be hot, and that has just been awesome to see that he has arrived. It's not a flash. It wasn't a maybe. He has arrived. This was the game where he officially arrived as that 5-star caliber guard everyone expected, and it's great. His poise, his pace, creation changed the entire flow of this offense early in this one, and it felt good. If you were watching this game from TV or if you were at the court, you could feel the crowd. It was insane. I mean, I'm watching this one hundreds of miles away, and you could just feel the atmosphere on the TV. It was insane, and a lot of thanks to that was to a guy like David Castillo. And I think he's going to be one of the fan favorites for a while just because he returned, just because he had that buy-in of Jerome Tang. And if you don't have a David Castillo this year, maybe you don't have that type of buy-in because those one or two players like him and Moby coming back and staying around, Taj Manning too, is huge to help build at least some sort of culture for all these new guys. That was an issue last year, and you don't have that. So a lot of credit should be given to David Castillo. It was a first half shooting clinic for this entire team, with the exception of Abdi Bashir Jr. And honestly, that's a really good thing. It's not that he played bad. He just didn't play a lot of minutes because he picked up his second foul very early in this one. He only had 6 points in the first half, but still, Kansas State shot the lights out. And they didn't need the best shooter in the country to do it in Abdi Bashir. David Castillo stepped up. PJ Haggerty stepped up. We saw great things from the down low guys. We're going to talk about them in just a minute. It was a very impressive outing for Kansas State on Thursday night against Cal. 55 points in that first half, only the 34 for Cal. And it was impressive. When you imagine what this looks like, this first half things, this first half performance, it felt like it couldn't get any better, right? Well, it could. It absolutely could. You could have all these players doing what they're doing and then not have Abdi Bashir in foul trouble and then him continue to shoot the lights out because his heat checks were good. His 6 points, there were some nice three-pointer shots that he had. So imagine what this looks like when Bashir is hot on the same night as PJ Haggerty, as David Castillo, as they're all rolling, as we get some of these big guys in the mix as well. This team is built to rain points on any opponent in the country. I'm super excited to see what they do February 14th against Houston. I'm very excited. Houston's known to keep teams below a certain amount of points. Are they going to be able to do that at Kansas State? I mean, let's just keep it real. This team is going to be able to score points. And if they can do it February 14th against Houston, man, watch out. Might be dreaming a little bit on that one. PJ Haggerty, Manhattan, in my opinion, might have never seen a guy like this. And I know there's a lot of good players that have come through Kansas State's roster. I mean, the broadcast was given Derrick Rose comps on the broadcast. I don't know if I want to go that far. And honestly, I think he plays more like a more modern player in like SGA, maybe. But either way, I mean, I think PJ, I hate comps, by the way. That'll probably be the last time you ever hear me do a comp. I think comps are very dumb. PJ Haggerty is PJ Haggerty. I think Manhattan's never seen anything like this guy, though. For what he does, the fact that he can continue to drive the lane and pick up fouls is the most impressive part of his game. He is averaging 8 fouls per game picking up on the other team. That alone, put him as one of the leading scorers in the country. Great. That's fine. I love that. Don't get me wrong. I love that Kansas State is scoring points. But the fact that you can play chess with PJ Haggerty, I think is his ultimate winning tool. And Jerome Tang continues to say that we haven't even seen the best of PJ Haggerty, which that alone is absolutely impressive. He gets downhill. He forces contact. He lives at that free throw line, and he controls the paint as a guard. That is amazing to see. And something with a huge concern that Kansas State has was what were they going to be able to do in the rebounding game with points in the paint? That was not a question whatsoever, especially with points in the paint. And PJ Haggerty had a lot of reasons to do that. A lot of reasons because he continued to drive the lane. He had 23 points. He was 7 for 12 from the field, 8 for 12 from the charity strike. And he's a big reason, one of the reasons why Kansas State had 56 points in the paint on Thursday night. 56 to 34 was the ratio between them and Cal with points in the paint. Unreal. Now, there's still some things that PJ Haggerty can fix. And don't get me wrong, this is a thing that you happen with every team in the nation. But PJ Haggerty had 7 turnovers. And Kansas State had 17 turnovers in the game. 7 came from PJ Haggerty. A lot of them came early in this one, too, in the first half, where they were having a lot of rhythm. They were pushing the pace. I think you're going to get some turnovers. The way that Matthew Driscoll and Jerome Tang have built this offense, where they are trying to be fast-paced, as quick as you can, put a shot up, get this defense confused, move the ball, put points up, as we mentioned, 55 in the first half. I think mistakes are going to happen. You have to find a way to limit those mistakes, sure, and not really be petty about the 1 or 2, but I think 7 might be a little bit too high. And I think they're going to probably try and get that down. I'm going to be happy if it's below 5 every game. I'm going to be completely straight with you. If PJ Haggerty has less than 5 turnovers, I think you find a way to be in every single game this season. So 7 might be a little tough, and I think that's one of the reasons why they had a tough go in the second half as well. There are a ton to talk about on this game. We're going to continue on the other side. Mr. Nate Johnson, I believe, is Mr. Everything. You know, the right-hand man, Mr. Defense, Mr. Glue. There's a reason he was MAC Player of the Year, MAC Defensive Player of the Year. His dunks were electric last year. I mean, the dunk that we had in Arizona last year against Moby, I think was beat twice in this game, both by Nate Johnson. His dunks were electric. He fills every gap, every position. He never forces anything offensively, which I think is really impressive as well, especially with working with guys like PJ and Abdi and all those other ones. He is the guy that's going to stabilize this team and make it a tournament team. So you can talk about PJ Haggerty's and all those other guys. I think when it all comes down to it, the unsung hero is going to be Nate Johnson. You can feel it. You can feel my energy. I know you can. And this offense alone, I think Kansas State is dancing for the first time in 3 years. I'm ready to call it now. November 14th, I'm ready to say it, that this team is going to be able to make it done. And with Tang steering the ship, even with this defense being bad, dare I say, I'm all in. Let's talk about what we're talking about this defense. And bad might not be the best word, but improvements are definitely what needs to come. We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, let's talk about DoorDash. This episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash, just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks. Saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. You know, it feels like forever since Kansas State's played a football game because Texas Tech and then the bye week. And, of course, there's injuries that's happened. But for me, one more time, I want to give it out for this week's player of the week's MVP. I'm going with Austin Romaine. I think what he did in that game against Texas Tech, although the defense couldn't hold on, I mean, honestly, what he did with the club on his hand and ultimately being out for the season, he performed in a big way, and he is the definition of what Kansas State football should be about, especially next season when they're trying to get back on the right way. So just like Austin Romaine delivered for Kansas State, DoorDash delivers you on Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season long, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. So order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, and fuel your game day with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period is through 11/18. Can you feel the energy? Because I think you can. I think you absolutely can. If you watched that game last night with Kansas State taking down Cal 99-96, and if you only watched the first half and then you're listening to this today and say, wait a minute, it was 99-96. Kansas State only won by 3. Well, Cal made their run. They did in the second half, and Kansas State bent for sure, but they never broke. And I think that's the important part here. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that we can take when we're talking about this defense. They bent, absolutely, but they never broke. So let's talk about defenses, fixes, and the upside of this team. Cal caught fire. That is probably the biggest takeaway when getting over this second half, is that it wasn't just defensive blunders from Kansas State. Now, there were some issues, and they have to be addressed and fixed, and we're going to get to that. But it was not all just bad defense. Cal was just hitting elite contested shots, and a lot of them were 3-point shots, of course, and that's what kept them really in this one. Amos had 25 points. He was 5 for 6 from the 3-point land. Chris Bell, I felt like, just couldn't miss in the second half. He had 27 points. He was 7 for 9 from beyond the arc. I mean, Cal hit 54% from the 3-point. And only in Kansas State, we thought they played great in the entire shooting department. They only shot 50% from beyond the 3-point line. So overall, I mean, Cal played a really good game in the second half. And if it wasn't for that first half great play by the offense, Kansas State might have lost this game because Cal found fire in that second half. Sometimes that just happens in basketball. And I don't want to say that you take away from the good performance from Kansas State. I really don't think you should. I think that there's some negatives you could take from this team. You could say, man, they still are terrible on defense. They'll never win in the Big 12. I'm not buying that. That's not what I'm buying in this game. I think they have what it takes offensively, of course, which I just mentioned and gone off. But I think the defense, what I see from this is not only is there some issues, sure, but it's completely fixable. And some of the issues just were based on how the other team was heat checking, and they didn't miss. Sometimes basketball is just like that. Dorin Buka had a breakout game, and that alone is something that you should be excited about on the defensive side as well. 7'2", junior coming out of Italy. He had 4 blocks in this game. It was easily the best game he has had since coming over and playing for Kansas State. The first couple of games, you kind of saw like, okay, maybe this guy's going to be a redshirt candidate. You could tell that development was not where you were hoping it was for Dorin Buka in the first game. And then I remembered what Jerome Tang said this offseason. I believe it was one of his segments he was talking about, like the little fun little things you see on the commercial breaks. It was also on YouTube, the Tang talking transfers. And he was discussing about Dorin Buka. And he said one thing about that. And he said, the cool thing about big guys is they get better as the year goes along. And that stuck with me. I remember that this offseason. And when Dorin Buka had this game, of course, it's only the third game of the season, but that's initially what came to my head. It's like, okay, we had to be patient with Dorin Buka. And sounds like 2 games being patient might not be enough. There might be still a blunder or two with his game, but we are seeing that he's becoming a game-changing rib protection kind of guy. He's easily his best performance since arriving from Italy. His timing, his discipline, the ability to erase mistakes were massive, and he still had a turnover or two, but he was also fighting for the ball above the 3-point line. On offense, he got a steal. He made a brilliant, like Peyton Manning quarterback throw. It was a bullet down to PJ Haggerty for an easy 2-point bucket. I mean, that was like a point guard kind of play. 7'2" point guard, Dorin Buka. Mark it. I mean, let's do it. But overall, I'm really excited what we saw from him. And my view on him has changed very quickly, and that's exciting. And I think that alone is exciting as well, because there were the biggest questions we had heading into this game, or this season, I should say, is, yeah, you have PJ Haggerty, you have Abdi Bashir, Nate Johnson. Those are a lot of great guards. But what about the 4 and the 5? What about getting rebounds, something we struggled mightily all season long last year? Well, now you're getting guys like Rapique, you're getting guys like Dorin Buka that are stepping up and doing big times. They lost the rebounding battle in this game. There wasn't many rebounds. There was only 51 rebounds total in this matchup. You did lose it, but you only lost it by 1. It was basically even, 26-25 in favor of Cal on the rebounding side. You did lose the offensive rebounding side 9-6, and you won defensive side 19-17. It's basically even. Call that even. But you have to find ways to get better on the rebounding game, and I think that's going to improve week after week with guys like Dorin Buka. And speaking of the bigs, I think Kamari McGriff had his breakout game as well, and his growth has been outstanding. Another player that I didn't know how much we were going to get from McGriff coming over from UNC Wilmington. I mean, he only started just a handful of games for them last season. I believe the number, I don't have it in front of me, was 11 games that he only started for UMC Wilmington. And now we're seeing why Jerome Tang took a chance on him to get over and move up to the power 4 level. Huge step forward, physically battled, rotated well. I mean, he put Cal defenders in the spin cycle multiple times in the paint. Him and PJ Haggerty are the prime reason why they controlled the paint in this matchup, and he had an excellent game. I'm talking excellent game in this matchup. He had, and he started this one as well, but he's played 20 minutes. He had 21 points, 8 for 11 from the field, 5 for 5 from the charity strike. He did take a 3-pointer, and it was not a good one. It was a brick. That was something that probably shouldn't happen, but he was wide open. You got to take that shot. No doubt about that. Only had 2 rebounds, though. And again, this is a game where there was basically everything was falling. Kansas State shot 56% from the field. Excuse me, Cal shot 56% from the field. Kansas State shot 64% from the field. There was only 50-something rebounds in this entire matchup, and Kamari McGriff was tied for 3rd on the team with 2 rebounds. I mean, that should tell you right there. The leading rebounder in this game for Kansas State was David Castillo with 4. So there wasn't really the bigs improving on the rebounding side. That's something I want to see improved. But on the offensive side, we saw that there can be bigs, McGriff especially, who can score down low and everything else opens up. It helps the 3-point shooting. It helps PJ Haggerty find lanes like he actually needs a lane. He can find, he can basically find himself in the smallest lane to get to the hoop and draw a foul. But having those bigs is super helpful. And I think we've got a few of them, not just one. And that's awesome. That is absolutely awesome for this roster. Jerome Tang's formula, I think now he has both sides. And, I think we have to start talking about how he's managed this so far. We've completely always said that he's a defensive-minded coach. That's why it didn't work the last couple of years. That's why offense struggled. That's why it lacked. Yes, he brought in Matthew Driscoll, offensive mastermind. I'm sure you got to give him a lot of credit as well. But the fact that he was able to adapt so quickly to move from a defensive-minded team over the last couple seasons to this team that is leading the country in 3-point shots, who is scoring almost 100 points per game, he deserves a lot of credit. He absolutely deserves a lot of credit for what's going here. From being known from elite defenses, now he finally has an offense that can outscore anybody, and I continue to plant the flag on that. These defensive hiccups that happened in the second half against Cal, where other than the shooting, they did have some struggles, stopping a 3. The transition was a little rough. Rebounding, of course, we mentioned. Some turnovers, of course. I think they're all fixable. You talk about the communication can be fixed. Rotations can be fixed. Off-ball discipline can be fixed. And better closeouts to get better reboundings all can be adjusted. You couldn't fix the offense the last couple seasons. We never really were worried too much about the defense. This year, I am completely ecstatic about the offense, and I believe that the defense can be fixed. If you can get that fixed by Big 12 play, I'm just telling you, watch out. If Tang has a team that can defend and score, watch out. Because I think you have a team that can make not only a bid in the NCAA tournament, but maybe get a win or two. And maybe that first-round game isn't seen as an upset, because this team can absolutely score. That's how you make noise in March, folks. I know we're talking about that in the middle of November, but this was a power conference game, a standalone power conference game. And that's why I'm doubling down. I'm buying in. I'm planting the flag. It's absolutely there for me in this one. This team is already better than last year, and I want to continue to tell you why this game, this 3-0 start, is super important compared to what we looked at last year. And I have the proof right here. We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, well, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is offering new customers $300 in bonus bets. And if when that first $5 bet hits, so check that out. Head to FanDuel.com, sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State. I appreciate you making this your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12. They got you covered everything across the conference. And, of course, with Kansas State beating Cal 99-96. And, you thought that if you only watched the first half, that this game would be, out of hand, out of reach. And it really was for the first 30 minutes of the game, but Cal found the way to get back. This is where I'm going to go in this segment here. I think growth, maturity, resilience, all of those are prime indicators of why the comeback didn't shake them and why it hasn't shaked my confidence and why I believe in this team. And it's taken me, it's been very quick for me to believe in this team this year because I see it. I can see the vision. But of course, the win against Cal here, a 99-96 win, last year's team loses this game. I completely believe that. And it's not shade. I don't think that's shade. I think that's reality. I think last year's squad loses this matchup. When it came down to the wire there, where Cal was coming back, I think Kansas State finds a way to lose that game last year. And you don't get to see Tang in the stands dancing when the game's over because I think it just falls. This is when Cal punched back. Last year's squad would have folded. And this year, I think they respond, they stabilize, they finish. And I'm excited for this. This is a better start than last season. This is the best start, the first 3-0 start since 2022. But last season, you got to remember, the first power conference opponent was LSU. And Kansas State looked lost. They lost the game against a really disappointing looking LSU team last year that also had a Kansas State transfer on it, something that we dealt with Cal in the game last night as well. And Kansas State took care of business this year. They lost their first power conference game last season. With the slow start to non-conference last year, that was the biggest reason why they didn't make the NCAA tournament. They had the resume on the Big 12 side. If you were only looking at Big 12 resume, Kansas State makes the tournament. It was what they did in non-conference that kept them out of the mix. And maybe one more win in the Big 12, of course, would have helped you secure that. But if you remember last year's men's basketball, whole bracket breakdown, all that good stuff, until the final week of the season, Kansas State was seen on the bubble. It was all about that non-conference stuff. This year, against a far better team, in my opinion, I think Cal is a better team this year with their shooters, with their defenders, with a lot of former professionals' kids on the roster. I mean, it's a basketball team. I think they're better than what LSU was last year, and they improved themselves. And I think that this team beating Cal compared to losing to LSU is something to pay attention to. The roster, the chemistry, the execution. I went out this offseason and I said, I think this team is a better fit. I was curious about the talent. I wasn't sure. Of course, everybody knew about PJ Haggerty, but there were so many questions about these other players like Nate Johnson, like Abdi Bashir, coming from teams at the lower mid-major levels. Some had tournament experience. Some were coming from losing teams. If they could make it the good jump up to the Power Four. And so far, I've been really impressed. And this was our first test against Cal, another Power Four school. And they shocked me in the greatest way possible. I am choosing to take the positives from this. I'm choosing to pay attention to what you want to see from the negatives, if you will, with the defense kind of luring towards the end. But once again, I believe that that Jerome Tang can fix those defensive issues. Next up, Tulsa. And could it be a PJ Haggerty revenge game or statement game, whatever you want? Remember, he kind of had his coming out year in his second year in college basketball as a member of Tulsa before he transferred to Memphis and then ultimately transferred over to Kansas State. I think Monday night's going to be fun. You know, this will be really where he bursted onto the scene. And I think it's going to be fun. He'll be locked in to send a message, in my opinion. So expect an aggressive, emotional, high volume game from him. And I think you're going to want to see the defense respond. I think Jerome Tang, although he is trying to transition this team into an offensive first, shooting first team, which I think is going to be the entire identity all season long. Don't get me wrong. There is something deep down in Jerome Tang doesn't like when his team gives up 60 points in the second half. I think that is very fair to say. And I think they're going to find a way to maybe let out a little bit of aggression against Tulsa on Monday. Kansas State's growing faster than anyone expected, myself included, but I'm willing to plant that flag right away to say this team is a team that can make the NCAA tournament. They're fun. They're tough. They're built with real scoring firepower. And I'll say it one more time. I think they can outscore any team in the country if they play like they did on Thursday night. Get ready. PJ might put on a show on Monday. We'll have more reactions for you coming on the weekend because Kansas State takes on Oklahoma State on Saturday, college football. We got games on Monday for basketball and, of course, plenty of other stuff on the channel. So make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure if you're listening on audio, you rate wherever you're listening. Really appreciate that. And thanks for making Locked on Kansas State, your first listen of the day. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you back here next time right here on Locked On Kansas State.